Everyone is present in the room outside of Dr. Barbara Adams. And just to confirm, she is not online.
Correct.
Okay. All right, hopefully everyone has the packet and you got it, the agenda in front of you, and the packet came to you by email. First up on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from the January 8th meeting.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we have no.
For the record, Dr. Adams just joined us.
Oh, great. Welcome, Barbara. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you.
Great.
All right. Next to public comment, we've got none in the room, so we'll go to online public comment.
Okay, I have Kevin and Ryan. I'm unmuting you now.
Welcome, Kevin. Can you hear us?
Are you okay?
We can hear you.
Great. Good evening. My name is Kevin Ryan. I'm your neighbor from Superior. I've been following the Part 150 process closely, and I'm eager to hear an update later this evening during this meeting. We heard a couple months ago how the quote data gathering process has already been initiated. The establishment and maintenance of transparent communications is a key element to any Part 150 study. Today, we'll hear about a plan to establish a Part 150 advisory committee who'll be asked to meet on 5 separate occasions. This will be in addition to the 3 community open houses. I understand the new advisory committee, as part of their charter, will be asked to collaborate on the input data for the noise model. We're now at least 2 months into the data gathering phase, as I understand it, and the advisory committee, to my knowledge, has not yet been established. Nor have there been any opportunities from the public, from impacted communities, to volunteer to serve on this committee. Please use this meeting this evening to review the process for exactly how the new advisory committee will be selected and encourage open and transparent process. Part 150 process will be the principal process for informing stakeholders about the existing and future non-compatible land uses around the airport. In order for there to be any level of confidence regarding the noise exposure maps that will be delivered, this community needs to see this open and transparent process right from the beginning. Please consider sequencing any additional data gathering exercises behind the establishment of this new advisory committee. Further, please make the nomination and selection process for the advisory committee open and fair to residents from all impacted communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other online comments?
No others.
All right, we will close the public comment period. We will move to the first business item, the UCAR presentation.
Okay, I will introduce Pavel. Hopefully I get your name right, Romashkin and Rob Reed from UCAR. They've agreed to present tonight. This is kind of a feature we kind of like to feature maybe quarterly or semi-annually, where we have a tenant here at the airport present who, I mean, speaking for myself, I don't know much about what UCAR does, and I assume there's some other tenants or some other public here who would appreciate understanding what one of our tenant with the largest hangar in the field is up to. So thank you to both of you all for presenting. And I think, Pavel, you may have a presentation, so I'm going to make you a presenter right now.
You probably got to stop sharing your Adobe. There you go. Perfect. Welcome, welcome. Oh.
So Pavel, we can see your screen, but I don't think we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay, it was on, but it didn't work.
Well,
thank you very much for having us. We won't take up very much of your time. What we wanted to do is I wanted to basically tell you what NCAR Research Aviation Facility is about, that is based at the RMMA. And then Rob will take over and show you a small overview of what our facility looks like inside, and maybe say a few words about our buildings. So, oh, great. There we go. What is NCAR Research Aviation Facility? Funded by the National Science Foundation, the NCAR is a federally funded research and development center, and the Research Aviation Facility is the probably the only one national resource that operates two highly modified research airplanes as a service to the U.S. science community. And essentially, any U.S. researcher interested in geophysical research, be it weather, climate, prediction, forecasting, or even actually hydrology or geology or snow cover study, could request and propose a study to use these aircraft to deploy in the US or anywhere in the world for that matter. So what does the RAF do? We provide unique airborne platforms and measurement capabilities that address scientific needs, usually of the atmospheric research community, but sometimes oceanographic, hydrologic, or other research. Air quality is one of the key studies that we support. We maintain these airplanes, we operate these airplanes, and we base out of here, as you know. We also can develop new instrumentation that addresses gaps and provides additional capabilities, frequently cutting-edge technologies to the U.S. research community. And the two aircraft that we operate are the Gulfstream 5 and the C-130 Hercules. This slide is overwhelmingly confusing, and I admit, but the idea is to basically show the hierarchy of organizations that govern the RAF. National Science Foundation at the top provides the funding. University Corporation for Atmospheric Research, UCAR, manages the NCAR Research Center. And within the NCAR Research Center is the Earth Observing Laboratory that not only manages the aircraft operating facility, but also provides radars, LIDARs, and other ground observing facilities for air quality and meteorology studies. And then finally, the research aviation, that's at the KBJC. That's the one that operates the research aircraft. Just to give you an idea where we are and what we are, here are the two hangars. It's a cartoon that shows you the C-130 on the ramp with a bunch of researchers around it. That's what it frequently looks like when we prepare to fly. On the right-hand side is our larger hangar, and on the left-hand side is the smaller hangar. And this picture shows you the same aspect, but with the Gulfstream in the hangar and the C-130 on the ramp. So schematically, that's what it looks like. And our airplanes, I think some of the best pictures, of course, to show is the airplanes. The Hercules aircraft, 26,000 feet altitude, 10-hour endurance. It's not a very fast airplane. 2,500 nautical miles is about what it can do at 200 knots or thereabouts. But the benefit of this aircraft is that it can carry a very large payload by size. So what we frequently fly on this airplane is air chemistry studies, air quality studies, sea surface to air exchange, cloud physics, cloud formation, albedo studies, things of that nature that support improvements of forecast models, improvements of hurricane forecasting, and other issues that are beneficial to society, protection of life and property, as well as development of fundamental science, which ultimately later contributes to applied science and societal benefits. So this airplane can fly low and slow. We routinely fly over the ocean at 100 feet altitude for a number of hours, which is very exciting. It's really cool to be in the cockpit when it happens. The second airplane we have is the Gulfstream 5. It's a completely different animal. Some people say that the C-130 is the pickup truck and this is the Ferrari, and every household, of course, needs to have both. So the benefit of this aircraft is high altitude and high speed, as complete opposite, more or less, of the C-130, although it's complementary in its capabilities. Some of the studies that basically I aim to utilize large-scale observations such as satellites and link them to more granular, detailed studies of air quality. They really need an airplane that can actually fly far and fast, but yet descend down low and do really detailed measurements in the lower atmosphere. That's how you can tie air quality to where that air is going to ultimately move and how is it going to impact people's health and well-being. So this airplane can carry only 2,500 pounds of payload, but it can go 5,000 miles on one fuel load and go very high, up to 50,000 feet. So very exciting combination of two capabilities that are not overlapping, but very complementary. We house a number of instruments at the facility, some of which are shown here. I won't go into much detail, but they range from radars that fly an airplane to laser air velocimeters to humidity sensors to specialized instruments down below in the middle that actually measure some really unique species such as iodine oxide and other things that impact the ozone layer destruction. So we maintain and deploy a lot of those instruments, and many of them are actually built at NCAR, but not at the KBJC campus, but instead in on the Boulder campus. Just to give you an idea of what we would do, this is a snapshot of 20 years of our deployments covering about 48 international and United States-based missions where we would fly anywhere from Tasmania to New Zealand to Thailand to South America and pretty much everywhere in the Pacific Ocean that has a long enough runway for our aircraft. This is a snapshot of the zoomed in area that focuses on the coverage of the United States. As you can see, most of the focus of our research actually is on domestic products such as air quality, forecast improvement, and also on transport of pollutants and their origin, which helps inform policymakers later to, again, hopefully ultimately improve life quality of our citizens. And to wrap up, I will show you just a few examples of specific projects. So one of them is called Wintertime Investigation of Transport Emissions and Reactivity. This is the creative name that the scientists come up with to simply state that we're flying in the northeast, and we're studying the wintertime transport of pollutants across that area, covering a very large swath, including also the ocean, which allows the scientists to understand whether or not, or how rather, ocean clouds and currents and warm waters impact the precipitation or further transport of pollutants generated by our activities on the ground, such as oil production and others. Another interesting project to mention is, for instance, this one where we flew, you can see the aircraft track on the bottom panels, where we flew in the Pacific to basically look at the typhoon that was going to impact Hawaii. And the need for that was originated from NOAA, actually, who had an aircraft issue with their Hurricane Hunter Gulfstream 4, and it could not operate. So we quickly took off from Jeffco, flew over to Hawaii, and deployed the study that they needed to forecast the land impact of that particular storm. It did not hit Hawaii, and we were very happy. Orcas, another interesting mission, telling you how diverse scientific studies can be. So we based out of southern South America, southern tip of South America from Punta Arenas, Chile. And the study covered a large swath of Southern Ocean, looking for basically oxygen versus carbon dioxide emission and absorption that is driven by cold waters and plankton and other microorganisms that populate those waters. The results of such studies go back to inform the scientists and then policymakers and general public about basically what are the budgets, how does the carbon dioxide get absorbed, and whether the greenhouse gas impact actually is mitigated by certain natural processes, a very important area to understand. And lastly, I'll mention this interesting study that we flew from Tasmania, again studying the Southern Ocean and formation of clouds. Southern Ocean is a huge area that reflects a lot of sunlight, but it's barely studied. So it was very important for scientists to understand, again, the effects of that entrapment of heat or reflection of it to contribute to global climate models that then drive forecasts of potential ice melt and, again, weather change that further impacts the public and their quality of life. And that is, in a nutshell, kind of drinking out of a fire hydrant of what we do at the Research Aviation Facility.
Thank you, Pavel. I think you need to give me share rights, Brian.
I just sent them to you.
Okay, so all I have to do is hit the share button, correct? Okay. And what I intend to do is just, can you all see that okay?
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
Hmm.
It may make you select a window after you click share.
Okay, you're right. To select that
It'll probably tell you that it needs a system approval or something. There we go. We got it.
window. And then I will have lost my. I apologize. I'm I'm not a big user of WebEx, so.
No one is in the county, so we fully understand.
You can see my grandchildren, right?
We can.
Thank you. Um, I am having an issue. Let me see if I can pull it up a different way. Here we go. It's right here.
Oh,
Yes.
perfect. Yep.
This, you have it now?
Yes,
We're
yes, we
sitting in
do,
an
Rob.
inside office looking building.
Okay, thank you. This is the interior, actually it's the second floor of our building. Just a little background. The original administrative building that actually connects the two hangars that you saw earlier in Pavel's slides was designed and built in stages starting in the 1970s, predominantly a single-story cinder block, very challenging, had with the important science that was taking place there. To say that the space was not conducive to research science and providing a good environment is a pretty much an understatement. The decision over a few years was either to reinvest in the existing building or to take the existing building down and rebuild and recapitalize a new structure, which is ultimately, after many reiterations and almost 2 years worth of discussion with the National Science Foundation and with the internal group RAF, we made the decision to replace the building. And Brian, I think that's when you and I met, is when we started that process, the design process. What you're seeing, the design concept within the building was we wanted it to have an aircraft, but also a bit of an industrial feel and promote collaboration without necessarily, building cube farms and putting scientists in cube farms, to try to provide collaboration spaces. What you see here on this particular slide is the um, second floor. There's a skylight right down the middle of the floor, and these are collaboration spaces. It's interesting to note that the staff, the stakeholders, the scientists, the mechanics, the pilots, everyone was engaged in the design process from start to finish. And we did the project in roughly, I'd say right around 2 years. The right in the middle or in the beginning, early stages of the project, we like many of us all experienced the COVID epidemic, so that created a significant number of challenges to continue construction, keep it as on schedule as possible and on budget. The original building was slightly over 20,000 square feet. The new building, without increasing the footprint on the site at all, is a little bit over 40,000 square feet. So we were able to double the square footage by going vertically to a two-story from a one-story building. It's not going to let me do this. Why am I having problems? I apologize, y'all. Oh, there we go. Here's a shot of it's a break room space for the entire complex. It's a it has virtually most of the amenities that you would expect in this type of space. As you notice, the glass doors that are on the outer edges of the building are articulated. The space can be opened completely up for staff. It has things like refrigeration units, microwaves. No, we do not have a beer tap. It would not be appropriate. I know that was somewhat trendy at a time, but we do have a barbecue where the two people are sitting outside. This shot was actually taken before that was installed, but this opens up to an outdoor patio that overlooks the tarmac and the runway, and actually has a nice view of downtown Denver as well. Here's another shot from the outside. Again, there's a pergola there. So again, we encourage staff to come out and use the space in the spring and the fall. It really is a nice amenity. And when they fly, of course, there's a lot of interest. Everyone comes up to the space and actually looks to the southeast and watches our aircraft take off or land, depending on what the situation is. Another view of this space. Again, this is some office space, some support space, and some respite spaces. The gentleman sitting in the corner, that's actually an area where you can sit and decompress. The other seating areas are really for people that may be visiting the people in those office areas to try to give them a comfortable place or another collaboration space. Another view, this is actually the first floor. This is, by the way, this is a highly secured building, significant level of access control due to ITAR and EAR requirements for some of the instrumentation that we have on those aircraft. They're sensitive and they require very specific security protocols to move around and have access not only to the planes but to the labs that I'm going to show you in a moment. And this is just a general kitchen area at that point. An outside shot of the building. And actually, just so you know, these were some marketing shots that the architect took, and we, per the National Science Foundation requirements, any National Science Foundation and signage related to that has been actually airbrushed out of this so that it could be used for marketing material. It was a requirement. The person on the second floor on the right-hand side of this is actually standing out on another deck that is on the northwest side of the building. The entire building has all the technologies that you would want in a building, all the Wi-Fi systems and the technological capabilities for meetings, collaboration meetings, events, etc. Another look at the conference room off to your left, and just another hallway that again, more collaboration work that does take place there. It's a workspace. The typically drawings are laid out here. It gives people the ability to spread out. There are labs that are just to the left of the center island there. So they will typically come out of that space, and if they're in a collaboration and they want to review hard copy drawings specifically, that's where they'll do it. And it's also a bit of a think tank, like I said, a collaboration group. We have a number of these areas throughout the entire building. This is a typical laboratory. This, I think, is the general purpose laboratory. It's set up to be, because again, as Pavel had stated, our scientists can present research proposals, and if they're selected to come in, they will come in and they'll bring in their equipment and work, and they'll need a place to work, and this is one of those places that can do it. There are I think we have 6 laboratories in the entire facility that are specific for very specific functions. This is a general research laboratory that can be modified and used for multiple functions over time. Just another look at the long corridor. I think this is the not sure. I think this is the first floor. I could be wrong there, but the feel here is the whole goal was to bring in natural light, and we have light wells both on the top floors and windows above each office. Each office is standardized other than the 2 executive offices that are on the second floor. They're 10 by 10s. They have light wells, and the light will come through and over the top to the offices that are in the center, so that we're not starving the center areas of natural light. And it really has been a very positive experience for those people that are working there. Here's another view of the front of the building. Again, what's missing on this is the National Science Foundation logo and the names on that, for, again, as I already explained. But again, very much to me, I like the lines of this building. They're very sleek, they're angular, and they really make a statement of I think what we do there and the importance of it. Just another view of that. And that's really all I had. Actually, I'm not sure. Give me just a second, and I apologize. I'm not used to this machine or the WebEx. This is what I was trying to get to. This is the space that you see here is when you come into the front door and check in and giving credentials to move within the building. This is where it's a main conference room. We call it a multi-purpose room. The missions, the flight missions that Pavel had described, sometimes we'll send live data back to the scientists that aren't actually flying on the aircraft, and this video wall allows them to see that information in real time. So that's a huge thing, because I've been there 9 years, and I've tried to get a flight on both those aircraft, and they won't let me do it because I have no scientific mission there to do it with. And the fact that I spent 6 years in the Air Force flying bombers and Other things didn't matter. But here, the scientists that don't get to fly on the mission have an opportunity to watch this and see their data come in live as it happens. And this gives you just another view. The backside of this wall, again, another articulated wall, can be closed off when there are meetings or they're doing science in there, or it can be opened up. And then this is come through the front doors. This is what it feels like and looks like. Just a couple things that are here that was actually designed by the administrator at the time. Those are runway markings that we did that we tried to replicate that indicate RAF, and that goes throughout the entire floor of the building. This building, these videos were shot before we branded the building. We did some internal branding to bring some character to the building from the inside, and that has not happened. It's not reflected here in these photos. That's all I have.
Rob, how many employees did you say are on site for this facility?
Pavel, I'll ask you that question at full capacity.
Around 40.
40. And then you'll get, you can get other, as the scientists come into the facility to do some of, you'll get an influx of more staff on that site. It is the newest building in the UCAR NCAR portfolio, and we have 11 buildings throughout the Front Range. We have a supercomputer center up in Cheyenne, and we also have a solar observatory on top of Mauna Loa in Hawaii, so, which is currently cut off because of volcano activity, and we're working on that. So,
do you do any tours facility at all or not?
Those have to be coordinated again because of the security requirements and the ITAR EAR requirements. Though that can be done, I would, Pavel, I'm not sure who would even ask for that at this point because there's been a little bit of turnover there.
Was that a question about tours? I missed it.
Tour. Yeah,
Yes.
tours.
We do offer public tours, and there is a process to request it. You can send an email to myself, and I'll forward it to proper people. You just fill out a form and explain the purpose. And what they do is they check people against the blacklists of the FBI and CIA in the proper, so that nobody's a terrorist who could steal our scientific secrets. And after that, we'll assign a guide, and you'll be given a tour. Keep in mind that at present, it would be helpful if you apply for a tour if several weeks out. A month out is a good time. Allows us time to schedule people and make sure there's no operational conflicts, because frequently the airplanes are away. So if you ended up with a tour when there isn't any airplanes around, it's not a whole lot of fun. You just look at empty hangars. But right now the C-130 is away and it is expected to be back in mid-March. The Gulfstream is here, so it is in a hangar and can be viewed. So if anybody's interested, you're welcome to get in touch and we'll get you situated.
Well, that's all we have. I hope.
Hi, this is Barbara Adams. I'm on a line. I'm with Civil Air Patrol. Can I get your contact info? I'd like to talk with you more about this.
Absolutely. Yes. If you have a pen, I could probably put it in the chat if I can figure out where that is. Here it is.
Okay.
And Barbara, if not, Ben's happy to make sure he gets that over to you.
Yeah, I can put you in
But-
touch with
Yes, that'd be best, I'm sure. Okay, sounds good.
I put it to the host, but because it doesn't let me to send it to all, but we'll see.
Yeah, we can pass it along.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Very interesting.
Meetings to UCAR and the
I
sunset.
know, right? Hey, I noticed the subtle nod to Google Meets on there, like, you saw that.
First it's the WebEx, now it's the conference room.
Other questions? What an amazing facility. I'm always fascinated by the amount of R&D and scientific work happening all over the Front Range here. And this is another great example. So thank y'all so much for taking the time, coming and sharing this great work. And I'm kind of with Barbara and others as we start getting some tours in a few months. I'd love to put my eyes on some of this more. But thank you both for coming and sharing this with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. I like that section. That's fantastic, Ben. Thank you for bringing that in and letting us get exposed to some sites. I just drove by that building. I was like, huh, I wonder what goes on in there. Next on our list, Part 150 introduction.
Okay, I can kick this one off as well. I'll introduce our RSNH consulting team, or actually I'll let them introduce themselves because they have some slides for introductions coming up. But yeah, feel free to come on up. RSNH is the firm we selected to assist with the Part 150 study. Back in, I think, September or October, we were under contract with you all. So we've entered into that study. You've heard updates from me, but I'm happy to have the expert who's actually done these before in the room here today to answer, provide some introductory stuff and answer any questions you may have. But just a reminder that this is a long process, and so we don't have all the answers today. In fact, we're still just kicking off the study in some ways. And David can address that going forward.
All right, if I could add that first slide, Ben.
Swap way.
So you can't navigate
There we go.
WebEx either.
Okay. So I
Yeah,
thought,
navigate it, yeah.
the first thing I thought I would do is just kind of introduce the team that we have, because it's not one person that can do all this. I'm Dave Full. I am the project manager. I've got a team of folks who are going to be working on this project with me. I'm going to talk about a few of these folks and tell you about their experience, because I think that's really important for you to have that understanding as well. So the next slide kind of talks about my experience. As project manager, I've been doing aviation environmental consulting, noise consulting for almost 40 years. Have done projects all over the country at many, many different types of airports. And I've been a project manager on more than 15 Part 150 studies. And I'm going to show you where some of those studies are, because I think they're really important for you to understand that. Julie Barrow is going to be my deputy project manager. She's here in Denver. She's done a lot of work here at Rocky Mountain Airport, so she knows the airport very well. And she's also been involved in many studies with respect to noise contours, noise analysis. And one of the things that's cool about Julie is she used to work at FAA headquarters, so she has that knowledge as well. She brings that to the team. And then the third person I want to talk about is Mike Alberts. He actually is a nationally recognized expert in doing noise analysis and actually sits on the FAA committee to review revisions to the noise model that we're required to use. So he's an expert in the use of that particular noise model. He's done many noise studies throughout the country, and he's also provided services here at Rocky Mountain Metro. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about my firm, RSNH. We've completed more than 25 Part 150 studies in the past 10 years. I really wanted to highlight a few of them, and I chose these 5 because I think they're somewhat similar to Rocky Mountain Metro. These are all airports that are reliever airports to a large hub airport or a medium hub airport in the United States. Chicago Executive, just 10 miles north of O'Hare. Detroit Willow Run, just west of Detroit Metro Airport. King County, that's Boeing Field. That's actually where Boeing 737s that's where they start their journey in life, is at that airport. And that's just north of SeaTac. Teterboro is one of the busiest general aviation airports in the country, and that's in northern New Jersey, just north of Newark. And then finally, the Ohio State University Airport, there in Columbus, very close to Port Columbus Airport. We've done Part 150 studies in each one of these, and it's an interesting process when you're in a metropolitan area, because you're not by yourself. You have other things, other airports that help influence how you operate here. That's important when we get into the Part 150 process. So I just wanted to give you that kind of background of processes that we've done at other airports that are similar here to Rocky Mountain. So what is a Part 150 study? I always like to tell people what it is and what it's not, because I really want to manage expectations on a Part 150 study. It is a voluntary program that an airport can undertake to address noise and land use compatibility in the vicinity of the airport. It comes out of the Aviation Safety and Noise Abatement Act of 1979. It's Part 150 of that legislation, okay? And that's where we get all our rules from. We have to follow these rules as part of that legislation. So it is a study from which we identify whether we have incompatible land uses in the vicinity of an airport. And if we do, what sort of mitigation, what sort of funding can we get from the federal government to help address those land use incompatibility issues? This is the only process that the FAA has in order to get money for those sorts of mitigation efforts. So that's an important element to understand. It is designed to basically uphold the interstate commerce that occurs in the United States, maintain aviation safety and efficiency of airspace, but also it really upholds the responsibilities of the FAA as well. That's what a Part 150 study is. It's extremely prescriptive. I have to follow various steps in various orders as part of this Part 150 process. What it's not a master plan for the airport. It's not an environmental review or any safety study. It is specific to noise and land use compatibility. And it's prepared in compliance with those federal regulations. It is not an opportunity to close an airport. We always come into a Part 150 study saying this airport will continue to be a functioning airport. You have grant assurances that you've got to meet, and it's not an opportunity to close an airport. So that's really important. And it's often very important that we make sure that the public understands that as well. That Part 150 is not that. It does not address air quality. We get a lot of questions about, well, the model that we have to use is an air quality and noise model, but we are only doing the noise part of that model. We are not reporting anything with respect to air quality because Part 150 doesn't allow us to do that. And then finally, it's not an opportunity to move noise from one community to another. Okay, that's also extremely important. The FAA will never approve any sort of measure that moves noise from one area to another area. That's not the purpose of a Part 150 study.
Yeah, one question.
Yeah,
for you,
sure,
Irma.
absolutely.
Under that second bullet point, you mentioned the closing, but you've also got in there or limit functionality.
Yes.
And just for some of our, do you mind just expanding on that just a little bit?
Yeah, so you know, the functionality of an airport, the kind of airport that you are, it is not intended to say you cannot, you can't function as that, as you do right now. Right? And as your master plan may say, this is how we're going to function. That is not the intent, is to change how the airport operates. Okay? Like the type of aircraft that come in, that sort of thing. Or to say, hey, we're not going to allow any more hangars. No, that's not what a Part 150 does.
Thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And then so why undertake it? I kind of gave the reason right up front is that it establishes the parameters under which federal money can be provided if we have a land use compatibility issue around an airport. So we, as part of this process, we identify where those land use incompatibilities might occur, and we establish procedures for making those projects eligible to receive the funding. Okay, so Ben's right. It's a long process. These take 2 to 3 years all the way through the process. And he's also correct, even though we got under contract before the end of 2024, we are in the infancy of the process right now. Okay, I'll take the next slide, Ben. So some roles and responsibilities. This is also important for people to understand. We're not working in a vacuum here. So you have the airport sponsor, Jefferson County, owns and operates the airport. They plan and assist with the implementation of any recommendations that are made as part of this. We have jurisdictions in the vicinity of the airport itself. Jefferson County cannot, do land use and zoning for other jurisdictions. They are going to have to be part of the process as well because they provide that information with respect to land use and planning and zoning within their particular jurisdictions. The FAA is obviously a very important part of this. Air traffic control is obviously responsible for the movement of aircraft, and we deal with them on these projects. But the FAA also is the entity that approves the noise exposure maps, the NEMs, and also approves the noise compatibility program, the NCP. So that's a really clear role that the FAA has. And I will say that if we have an NCP and it's got 20 measures, the FAA has veto power, line item veto power. They get to approve or disapprove each one of those measures. Okay, so it's not an all-encompassing thing. It's each one that they will take a look at as to what can be implemented. And then finally, we have interested and affected parties. Those are the folks that are going to provide input regarding noise concerns, regarding NCP recommendations, understanding the procedures under which we're operating. So there's a lot of moving pieces and parts here as part of a Part 150 study. And we will continue to bring everybody along as we go through that process. Next slide. So we do have a public outreach process as part of this. It's actually a requirement to get input from the public as part of the Part 150 study. Having done this at all sorts of different airports, it's really important for us to provide clear information, make it as accessible as possible. We have a lot of rather complicated issues that a lot of people just don't understand right at the beginning. So it's an educational process as well. We have to be able to provide this information that's easily digestible and understandable, and that's part of our job. It's also to be transparent. We're giving people every bit of information that we can give with respect to the process. We have a firm on board, Peacock Sinning. They are going to be part of our public outreach. They are public outreach experts. We've worked with them on many other projects as well. They're very good at what they do. They are going to be part of this public outreach. They're going to work hand in hand with the RSNH team to do that. So the key goals there are to establish that clear, accessible opportunities for public participation. We're going to let the public know every time they have an opportunity to participate. We're going to have a website where they're going to be able to go and provide comments on the process. Not set up yet because we're in our infancy here. We have to prepare all of our materials to be ADA compliant so that everybody can understand them and make them as easy as possible to understand. I talk about education. I would say more than half of our jobs on the Part 150 study is to educate, not just the public, but educate airport users as well about issues and how, what we need to do, and educate local land use jurisdictions on what they can and cannot do with respect to this process. And it's to build trust. I mean, this is a process where we're bringing all sorts of people together, and we want to make sure people are comfortable providing diverse views. Not everybody, loves the airport. We know that, right? That exists in every airport environment. We want to hear what they have to say because they definitely have thoughts and input into the process. So building that transparent communication is really key for us as part of this process. Next slide. So engagement strategies. We've identified some committee meetings, and we would have a variety of those. We're still working out what that looks like, and we're talking with the county on that. So we don't have, I don't really have a lot of information to provide yet on what that's going to look like, because I know our public commenter, asked about that, and I really want to say, I don't know yet. Trust me, I'm going to be providing more information about that when it's available. We also will have 3 public open houses. Those will be very much in, we'll have boards that are set up around the room and people can come when whenever they want to come and talk to us about things and start to understand it. We find that those are really good. The first one we would hold would be at the very beginning, if you will, of the process, so we can explain the process to them. The second one would be after the noise exposure maps have been developed so we can show them what they are. And the third would be at the NCP, the noise compatibility program stage, so that the public can understand that through that open house. So the communication tools that we have there, talked about the website, newsletters. We'll be doing some newsletters as well. There will be FAQs because we'll constantly get new questions and we'll respond to those, and those will be on the website as well. And then advertising, making sure that the public understands when these meetings are occurring and how they can participate. And we're going to do that in a variety of ways. It used, you know, I'm old enough to remember the only way you used to do this was to advertise in the newspaper, right? Well, not that many people get newspapers anymore. So we really do go into social media methods as well for advertising, because I think that's important to be able to provide people that information. Yeah.
How will the size of the advisory committee be?
We're still working that out. I
What
would
is it typically?
typically, I like to say maximum of 12 to 15 people. Once you get more than that, it's just, you know, it just gets to be unwieldy, to be honest. And so that's why it's really important that when we set up this committee, that the members who are on the committee will be will basically pledge that, yes, I'm going to be there for all the various meetings. Yes, I'm going to read the materials. Yes, I'm going to participate. So we will actually have what I call an operating agreement that people will sign to say, you know, that they will participate in this process. It's extremely important, and that's why we place such a high level of importance on it, because it's important as part of the process.
What's the typical mix of types of people?
Well, we do want diverse views. And so I should probably say that the legislation says that we're required to consult with airport users, and we're required to provide the public with opportunities for input. So that the legislation's a little bit different in terms of that. So we're still working out, you know, who's representing whom on the committee, but that will be diverse from that standpoint. We will, whatever we set up, we'll be able to have members of the public, airport users, local jurisdictions, you know, all represented within our structure.
Two follow-ups on that, just
Yeah.
before we go
Yeah.
off this slide. I thought, you know, our public comment earlier asked about the data endpoints and the exposure maps. Some of that work has already started. Can you maybe just speak to, is there any impacts, or are we taking away any of the opportunities to collaborate by not having this advisory?
Not yet. We aren't far enough along to even be able to provide that information to anybody yet.
Right.
So,
So
yeah.
we're not out ahead of the skis on
yeah,
that.
no, not at all. Not at all. In fact, we really are just starting on developing the forecast for future activity. So, I mean, that's how early we are in the process.
And then my second, Ben, maybe more of a question to you for this advisory committee, and I think there will be a lot of interest in how that is. Do we foresee that being like a place where we're channeling or allowing for applications, or maybe just help us frame? It's okay to say, I don't know.
Well, the true answer is I don't know, because it's actively being talked about. We've got one initial discussion with commissioners. I think we'll end up probably briefing them in a week and a half about some potential options.
Got
We had an initial thought of how we're gonna do it in scope of work, but we've come to realize there's other thoughts and other possibilities, and so we're presenting those to the commissioners to help to have them weigh in on, you know, what kind of mix they'd like to see, and how would we appoint members or participants to that list
Would that be in a BCC hearing?
in a briefing, yeah.
Got it. All right. So just FYI for those listening, those briefings are open to the public. So if that process is something that's interesting to you, you will have a chance to listen in on that at one of their future briefing agendas.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great. I think we can go to the next slide. So the implementation of outreach, we have created a detailed outreach schedule. We are going to, that's preliminary at this point, because we don't know how all the committees are going to be and everything. So we'll have to update that once those decisions are made. But we will, with that also will be available for folks to see what that public outreach schedule looks like. But also the supporting the public comment collection and response protocols. Again, having a place on a website, having different methods for people to be able to provide comments, we think is really important. And so we will have, that will be included in there as well. The deliverables there, again, the clear messaging aligned with the standards, the branding standards of the county. We want to make sure that this looks consistent and is part of Jefferson County's, materials. Those materials need to be informative to the public. And also to the media, because I have a feeling the media will be interested. They're interested in every Part 150 study we've ever done. So we need to make sure that those materials are available to them as well. But then, as I said before, there's going to be updates via email, website, newsletters, all sorts of different types of communications that will be occurring throughout the process. I will say that there will be times when people will say, well, I haven't heard anything in a couple of months. And it's like, yeah, because we're working on getting you the next bit of information. So it's not those sorts of information will not be a weekly thing. It may not even be a monthly thing. It will depend on the how the process moves forward. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. And then just some outreach examples that we like to show, kind of give people an idea for what it kind of looks like. We do actually have a website name already. It's RMMA part150noisestudy.com. So we do have that domain, and that's what we'll be using for that. Don't go there yet because it's not populated, but that is where all that stuff is going to be. And you can see we have, what a newsletter might look like as well. So it's really meant to provide an easy way for people to get information. And I believe, man, that's my last slide. Yeah. So I guess I'll stop there and see if I have any other questions.
I have a question. So let's say they have a problem with areas as far as noise and stuff like that. What do they do to kind of mitigate it, or what are some of the examples of how they fix the problem, let's say?
Well, there are, when we get into the noise compatibility program process, okay, the FAA in the legislation says you have to look at, I think there's 7 different types of things that are available in the toolbox, if you will, right? And they can range from a variety of things of, is there a preferential runway that we could implement here at the airport? If that's an issue. Is there a voluntary flight quiet program that could be implemented? One that's implemented at a lot of airports is for residences or schools or any other noise sensitive land uses within the noise contour, for them to get money to do insulation, new windows, new doors, to reduce the interior noise of the house. You can't do anything about the exterior, right? But you can do something about the interior. So that's another mitigation. But when we get there, we'll get you the whole, there'll be a whole list that just kind of giving you a smattering of things that we have to think about.
Some of the ideas of.
Yeah. Yes. But do remember, I have to stay within those parameters of what the FAA says I can look at, so.
What do you guys envision as the role of the advisory board throughout this?
So in that scope of work that's been approved by the FAA and that RSNH is operating under currently is a couple, I forget exactly how many check-ins with the advisory board, but more of them. So as the data is developed, as the NAMs are available, as a noise compatibility plan is being worked on, we would use you as an additional check-in point besides that other advisory committee or whatever else the other check-in points are with both the commissioners and the public engagement as well. And then along with that, I think probably no matter what form that advisory committee takes, we propose that there be at least one advisory board member appointed to kind of be a bridge from this group to that group. That's kind of subject to however things are decided right now, but that was the initial proposal at least.
I'd like to find out more about it, but I'd probably volunteer for something along that lines.
Yeah.
So going not it.
It is a commitment.
It is a commitment, yes, it is.
I'd like to find out a little more.
Yeah,
about
understood.
what's involved.
Understood.
Barbara, I want to make sure online that we don't skip any of your questions. Okay. Any other board questions? Okay.
All right,
Thank
for
you
your
so
time.
much. Yeah, we appreciate it. Look forward to it. And again, we'll reiterate, a long process.
Yes, indeed.
So you will be quite frequent over the next couple of years.
Yes, I will. You bet.
All right, moving on to our airport updates, and we got quite a few of them. So I know we're bumping up against a 6 o'clock here, but this first one's very, very important. I know last month we put a teaser and a framework out there. This week now we're going to kind of dive into it. So I think, Sydney, you're presenting our community engagement plan.
I am, yep, and I just wanted to reintroduce myself. I think it was my first week last month. So again, my name is Sydney Boyd. It's been about a month now since I started. So we are currently talking about and reviewing our communications strategy. It's important, and I have on this slide, that RMMA is committed to acknowledging the frustration and the disappointment that many community members have expressed regarding their experiences with the airport in a way that feels authentic and leaves room for collaboration and understanding for all parties. Our top priority is to ensure that our community engagement efforts are meaningful, transparent, and accessible. You go to the next slide. And that's throughout the strategic communications plan, social media strategy, and community engagement strategy. So as I said, all three of those plans we're currently reviewing internally. And then at our March Airport Advisory Board meeting, I will probably take the entire time to go really in depth through each of those three plans and initiatives that we have. And I'm asking that from you all, from the board members, to share your thoughts and your feedbacks and your ideas at that point. If there's something that feels off or something that maybe I've overlooked or an idea that you have that I haven't implemented, I would really appreciate it to be more of a conversation than me just speaking at you for an hour. But as I said, we're reviewing internally all three of those plans: strategic communications, social media, and community engagement. And I'll present those to you in March, thoroughly, line by line, all the time. That's my update on the community engagement plan.
Board questions on that? Will that plan touch on 150, or will that be a little bit separate? What we just talked about, the part 150 is a separate strategy?
Yep, separate. So it's all following the same goals to be transparent and authentic, but the part 150 outreach is different than this plan that I will show you in March.
Okay, faster.
Supplemental, additional.
Comprehensive.
Voluntary noise abatement procedures.
All right, so the airport did provide the state of Colorado the updated flight VNAP for House Bill 24-1235. We did brief it to the Board of County Commissioners on February 4th. And now the tricky part and the more important part starts, where we try to make sure that we properly notify the public, notify pilots, inform pilots, and make sure that we update our 5010 forms and have all the meetings necessary and the training necessary to ensure compliance with the VNAP. So if you remember the House bill and how we're trying to approach that issue, the F flight schools and commercial operators at the airport will meet with tenants, or meet with their students, meet with their CFIs monthly. And the airport will have quarterly meetings with our tenants that do flight training to reinforce the educational process of the VNAP. It is important that we do that and do it well. And so, we'll invite all the flight schools together. We'll have those meetings. We'll go through that educational process and really kind of have those discussions on an ongoing basis. It's never over. The VNAP is a constant evolution of involvement, and we want to make sure that we, involve and educate that as much as we can. And that's the VNAP for right now. Yeah.
Any questions from the board on that? Okay.
Last time I was here, we talked about sending a letter to the FAA about the traffic pattern altitude at the airport and en route altitude. We did brief the County Board of Commissioners on January 14th about that request. And then we did send a letter to the FAA on January 23rd, and the FAA notified me that they had received that request on the 28th. I'm not making any necessarily guess as to when the FAA would come back as to when that might happen. If it doesn't happen before the 150 study, I would imagine, assuming a noise compatibility plan is developed for the 150 study, we would address it at that point in time as well. It is an important thing that the traffic pattern becomes standardized to the rest of the nation at 1,000 feet. So we're waiting for FAA input, but we did provide it, and we did get receipt that they received our request.
So just to clarify, because when you say if it beats the part 150, that's a 3-year process. What's a normal timeline to hear?
I would expect the FAA to come back within 90 days at some notification as to what they think is going on. And I will bother the FAA about once a month and say, hey, where are we on this? Can you please provide me a timeline? I don't know I would necessarily come back to the board to provide an update on this next time unless there's some movement on it. Sure. But for right now, this is the movement. We've done our part, and we're waiting for the FAA to provide more context or more information.
Any questions, board?
Nice photograph.
Let's reply. All right, Basin 160.
All right, if we're lucky, this will be the second to last update on this project. Construction started January 6th. I've kind of been giving you updates as we went along. But it's only a 45-day calendar construction period. We're in mid-February, and if all things go to plan, this project will be done by the beginning of March. Weather pending, of course. So you can see the lower picture is the forms being set up to pour for the actual outlet structure for the project. So there's a lot of concrete that's being hauled into this project. So that's why there are some runway closures off and on. So thank you to any pilots who are keeping their heads out for that.
Any questions?
I'm sorry, can we go back just briefly? I just did think of one on the pattern altitude.
Yeah, sure.
Question. Is there any appropriate political pressure that can be brought to bear on that, especially if it lingers?
If it lingers, I'll provide some guidance as to who I might think might be the proper contact for you to release the logjam. For now, we have to let the process at least kind of
Yeah,
play its way.
by all means, sure. I think we all know the process.
Taxiway KD.
All right, a little bit of movement on this one. We're still working on the right of way and have regular updates with Excel and Lumen to advance their utility relocations. We are also about to issue an invitation to bid for the fence project that kind of needs to occur with this project. So that should be at the bid later this month. And then that project kind of encompasses the airport property that will be opened up as part of that taxiway construction. The one thing that has changed since I developed the slide and sent out the agenda packet is that we actually did receive a final determination from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering regarding whether there were any waters of the U.S. in the study area and the project area, and there are not. So that's one more hurdle that we've kind of cleared in terms of our commitment to make sure this project goes forward from a good environmental point of view. So we're still working on other final steps, permitting with Jefferson County and those utilities. So still no fixed construction start date, but we're getting closer on that one.
Any questions? All right, unleaded fuel.
Unleaded fuel, kind of similar update as last month's. We are working through the grant application process at this point. Wolpert has provided us a scope of work, basically stating what they would do in terms of this project to get it installed. That has to get approved by the airport and the FAA. It's in the FAA's hands right now. And then after that, we go and negotiate fees and get them under contract to actually do the work. Those are kind of the standard FAA procedural steps that we're following to have a federal grant as part of this process. And we still anticipate releasing an RFP or a request for proposals for a fueling partner who would deliver the fuel. I'd say the other thing that's kind of newer is we're hearing conversation about Swift 100R potentially being approved within the next month or two. I know there's questions about like fuel type, and I think as airport staff, we'd be curious, like as pilots or users on the field, if you guys have feelings on what type of product you'd like to see or trust the most. I mean, I guess you could provide that feedback to us. That would help in the process. On the other hand, we're still balancing what is actually approved from a regulatory point of view. So things are moving quickly at that time, which is why I haven't felt comfortable saying like, this is the fuel we're using starting now, because it might change in a month. More to come there.
Any comments or questions on that?
I think I might have asked this already, but I can't remember the answer, so shame on me, but is there an intent at some point to make it available through self-serve pumps or?
I don't think you've asked that question that I recall, and it's a good one. We had an initial discussion of whether we could just go direct to a self-serve tank to begin with, because that felt like kind of an easy, and then people, whoever wants to use it can just pull up and fuel. But what we heard from some of the larger users on the field is that that would be impractical. Like if we were wanting to see a substantial use of fuel, like have a lot of the flight school fleets using it, the prediction was that there'd be giant lines of planes waiting to fuel up, and then realistically, people would probably just not use it. So
Perfect world both.
yeah, I totally agree. And I think, within the next couple of years, I think we'll be there anyway. But that's why we ultimately decided to go with a bulk tank and deliver it by a truck in the short term.
If
Any other
we
questions?
go for the, if we go for the 100 at this time, how involved would it be if in the future lower lead capabilities are available to us? Would we have to go through the same process again, or could we convert it easier in the forthcoming?
Barb, I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you asking if we go to unleaded, there'd still be leaded fuel available?
No, if we go to the 100 fuel, if we have a lower lead capability in the future, say 2, 3, 5 years in the future, would we have to go through the whole process again, or would it be easier to convert?
So if we have 100 R or whatever on the field, and you want to
Right.
use like 94 UL, would 94 UL be available? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or something, who knows in the future with science, if it's even, say, 85 or something available in the future, who knows?
I know the goal right now is to get 100 replacement on the field as soon as we possibly can. And then once the leaded fuel has been removed from the field, I think we can talk about what my other options might be, but the priority right now is to get 100 proxy on the field in operation as soon as we can.
Okay.
Any other questions on unleaded?
Actually, I have a question. I think Barbara brought up something I guess I had never heard talked about as far as a plan, and maybe there's no plan yet, but if 100 unleaded fuel were implemented and brought on the field, I would assume there'd be some amount of time in which the standard 100 low lead and that would both be available until there was a confident that that supply is not going to just end or be in short supply or anything like that. Do you have any sense of how long it would take until it was only unleaded was available on the field versus versus both? Or
I suppose the discussion right now is how do we get a 100 octane fuel on the field that passes ASTM inspection that pilots are willing to use as soon as practical. When that can happen, there will be some transition period between that amount of fuel and phasing out the leaded fuel. What that timeline looks like is kind of up for discussion at the point in time. House Bill 24-1235 requires the airport to come up with a fuel transition plan by the end of the year. And so if we don't have a 100 octane replacement on the field before that, which hopefully we would, there will be some process in June or July of this year where I'll come back to you and start introducing the fuel transition plan to you and show you what that might look like.
Right.
Or not what it might look like, but what we would suggest to you that transition looks like. And that will be later this year if we don't already have the replacement on the field by that time.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that there's no other airports that have done this ahead of us, where there's existing models out there. This is how other people have done it or whatever, just because the fuel itself isn't available yet in quantities that make.
There's discussion a lot about whether or not the GAMI 100 UL is a fuel that pilots would use or really feel confident using that fuel. The 100R from Swift has not been commercially available yet. It's available in limited quantities, and they don't want to make that available until they pass ASTM inspection. Once that happens, I think I was reading a story the other day. They have about 22,000 gallons that they've kind of pre-ordered, which isn't a lot. But we are kind of on the frontier here, literally trying to figure out what is the best way to do that transition in a most responsible way possible. It won't be a process that gets delayed for any sort of reason. It's just a process of making sure that we have fuel to go. But yeah, I would imagine competition for that fuel will be tight. And the sooner we can get an operational ready to do that, the more ahead of the process that we would be than other people.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on the unleaded? All right, the modernization of the FAR Part 141.
So this one's a little interesting in the sense that we don't normally talk about pending regulation or pending thought processes from you guys on the advisory board, but the FAA is talking about modernizing Part 141, which is, let's call it professional pilot training. And it's really kind of, what is the FAA is looking for impacts from different airports. The city of, I want to say Phoenix, right? Yeah, Phoenix did recommend a couple different alternatives or different improvements that they might be able to make for Deer Valley for their airport for 141 training. And I guess I'm kind of leaving it up to you guys as to, are there suggestions that you might have for improvements to 141 flight training? Are there things that you think that could change? One thing that kind of comes a lot is flight sim time. Can we increase the number of hours in a sim versus in a plane? Are there changes that we can make to the 1,500-hour requirement for an ATP so that that number can come back down? So those are the kind of things that the FAA is kind of looking at. I know other airports are looking at what they might recommend as well. So if there are things that you want to recommend to me that the airport could submit for ideas on 141 changes, I certainly would be willing to do that. I don't know if we need to come back for another airport advisory board meeting to do that, but if there are things that you think the airport should recommend, please feel free to tell me. They have their first public meeting on March 6th, and I do believe the deadline for comments is near the end of March. So we don't have a lot of time to recommend changes, but if there are things that you think that the airport should recommend, I would want to see it, and so I could do that.
So March 6th, they're doing the intro and then comments are due by the end of March. I see that you've got down there for consideration for a future meeting. Would a work session be interesting to us for the March 12th meeting on this? I see one yes, I saw one no, I saw one shrug. Okay,
I think so.
okay. Let's tentatively put it on as a work session. Let's look at what that may look like for the March 12th meeting, and we'll circulate, and we can always nix it from the agenda if we don't feel like there's enough on it to do so. But yeah, let's tentatively add it as a consideration for a future meeting.
Okay. So, this is a little embarrassing, but we are open and honest, and we're trying to be more transparent about the airport's operation. So we're going to talk a little bit about airport lease rate discrepancy. About November, one of our tenants came to us and said they thought that the way we were calculating our rent was incorrect. And this would affect leaseholds on the airport that have their rent adjusted by CPI. So that would be, you'd have to have like your own private hangar. It does not affect portable hangars, doesn't affect T hangars, it doesn't affect tie downs. It purely affects leaseholds on the airport. If this issue affected you, you certainly have already been notified about the issue, and you would have received at least certainly an email from me telling you about this issue. Because we kind of looked at it and we think there potentially is an issue on the rent, we are asking an external auditor to look at that rent, tell us a couple of different things. What is the amount that the airport potentially overcharged? What is the proper rate for those leaseholds potentially going forward? And what would be the best way for the airport to reimburse the tenants that we've potentially overcharged for? The airport probably would prefer to just write checks and solve it from a cash flow perspective, but we are waiting for the auditor to tell us those things. It could take a couple of months to complete that audit, but when it is done, we'll certainly come back to you, tell you kind of what happened with the audit, give you the numbers of the things that the auditor finds out, and try to continue with that transparency as to say, hey, we made a mistake, we're trying to fix it, and be open and transparent about what that mistake was and what we're doing to fix it.
Board members, any questions on that?
Question on that. Eric, do you know approximately how far back that would go? Like, are they looking back a year or two, or is it?
We're gonna go from 2018 to current.
To current.
So whatever current is at the time the audit's done, that's what current will be. So it's not like 2023 or whatever, it's 2018 to whatever month the audit is finally completed at.
Right.
And then we'll come back and tell you what we find out from the audit.
And like things like that would be, I imagine, I guess I don't imagine, I don't know. But I would assume the total impact to the airport might be fairly significant. Is it significant impacts to the lease, to the leasers, the people who are paying on their leases? Is any of them, kind of life-changing or game-changing amounts, or is this more technically just to get it right?
It's probably more closely to being technically correct than it would be a large amount of windfall for any particular one person. I can't really tell you the exact amount. I need the auditor to really tell me like what the amount is. We don't particularly think it's a large amount, but it is important for us to be transparent about what that amount is,
Yeah.
and talk to people individually about what they might get back.
Okay.
Board, other questions on this one? Will this be one that you think comes back here, or will the external auditor and everything just be handled internally from here?
I will come back and give you a summary of what happened.
Okay.
The auditor will do their work. We'll talk to the tenants that are affected and provide them details about like how much we might have overcharged for them. That's separate from you. We'll come back to the advisory board and tell you exactly numbers and figures from the audit as well.
Sure. All right, that wraps up the business items. Any general questions from the board members?
I've been curious about last September, October-ish, we had someone interested in starting a new lease on airport land. Where are we in that process, or has it died?
Are you speaking of like a developer who wanted to build a number of hangars on the airfield?
Yes.
So when we had a conversation about that last, it had to do with doing a request for proposals for new hangar development on the southwest development area of the airport. It has not died. It's in the process of making sure that we have a good RFP that's respects a couple of different factors. One, we want to make sure that we're focusing on the highest, best use of the land, making sure that whatever we're developing over there is appropriate for the kind of the area, focusing more on large to medium-sized corporate hangars and like a maintenance repair or an MRO facility rather than like T hangars. The goal is really to try to focus on large hardware rather than small props. And so we're trying to take our time to construct that RFP and reach out to economic development corporations and cities about how we might be able to best reach those kind of customers and how those customers might be users of the town that is near the airport. It's trying to be more comprehensive on the RFP than maybe we have in the past. And so it's taking a little bit longer for us to make sure that RFP gets constructed in a way that accomplishes that rather than just having everybody submit a bunch of T hangers and we may or may not get stuck doing that. So we want to try to avoid that. And so we're trying to be thorough on what that RFP process looks like.
Good, thank you.
Any other general questions? All right, our next scheduled meeting is for March 12th. Just confirming that that still works for everybody. And it looks like we'll have at least one item added to that agenda amongst the other things, a little bit of a work session around the Part 141. All right.
Is there, if okay, if I can bring up one quick thing, Eric?
It's your
Yep.
advisory board.
I'll just real quick, I'm gonna, you guys know, about 9 months ago, we started a BJC operating group, and it's the flight schools, a couple of tenants on the airport, and Chris Swafford. And we put this group together to work on noise with the flight schools and try to mitigate stuff and help the public, things like that. Obviously, we're gonna work with the airport, the FAA and everything. We found with the FAA that they are not willing to do much with us because there's a lawsuit going on. So we drafted a letter, and Chris is actually going to Washington DC. He's got contacts there about raising the pattern altitude to 1,000 feet. So we're trying to really work hard on that. We put a lot of stuff, a lot of work into that right now. We've also worked on a map with different areas that we're flying, so that way we can be away from populated areas. We've got different things that we've designed, and we're working on other things that we've come up with in the group so that we can present to the FAA, start working on some more ideas to help with the public and with the airspaces and the flight schools and operations. So we're kind of working on that. We've been working on it in the background so that way we don't have people kind of trying to get into us, but now we're trying to bring it out public and work with different groups so we can start, working together and getting this moving. So thank you.
Thank you for all your work on that. I think just to reiterate what you just said, this is the flight schools and the pilots being proactive and trying to work towards these community-wide solutions that we're hearing and finding challenges with response from the FAA and finding ways that we can get in there. So thank you for bringing that to the public and to the board. So all right, if there's nothing else, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Thanks, everyone. We are adjourned. Thanks, Barbara, for joining us.
Thank you. Oh, I'm coming back in March.
Oh, great,
Yeah,
great.
see
I
you,
look forward
Barb.
to seeing you.